Hi friends, in today's current affairs, we'll discuss a very important topic called simplification of direct tax laws. Simplification of direct tax laws. That means the laws dealing with the direct taxes need to get simplified. Laws dealing with the direct tax need to be simplified. So what are the laws that we have and why we need to simplify? Is there any effort that is already undertaken to simplify that? And what is the necessity to simplify it? If at all we need to do simplification, what are the factors that we must keep it in our mind before you are doing this simplification process? See, the direct tax, first of all I'll deal about this direct tax and I'll later come to the direct tax laws. What is this direct tax? Direct tax means the incidence and the impact of the tax on a same person. Incidence and the impact of a tax on same person. That means what? Suppose if I am a person, I am earning some money, they will impose the tax because I am earning the money and I have to pay the tax. I am earning the money, I have to pay the tax. This is direct tax. Incidence and the impact of the tax is on same person. That means who is paying and on whom you are levying, both are same. Then what can be other? There is another thing called indirect tax. Indirect tax means you are levying tax on somebody, he is paying the tax but he is collecting the tax from another person. This is indirect tax. I will give an example for this. Example here is income for this direct tax. That means I am earning the money, so I have to pay the income tax. Suppose take the case of this mobile or take the case of rice or anything. Who is paying the tax on this mobile? It's not me. The manufacturer or the wholesaler or that whatever the one who is running the showroom, he will pay the tax on mobile. But does that burden is only on this person? No. He will shift that burden to the consumer. So the impact of the tax, incidence of the tax is not on same person. We call this as indirect tax. And if it is on same, we call it as direct tax. Like there are different type of direct taxes are there, like income tax, corporate tax, capital gain tax. Earlier we used to have wealth tax, but now we abolished. And after that some fringe benefit tax, security transaction tax. Like that we are having different type of direct taxes. And these direct taxes are very, very important. The taxation is important for any country and the direct taxes are very, very important. Why direct taxes are important? Because taxation is the source of revenue for the government, but at the same time you can't equally levy both the direct and indirect taxes. You must understand this indirect tax is a regressive tax. Regressive in the sense, suppose if you want to increase the tax rate of indirect tax, and in our country now we are having a GST as a major indirect tax. Apart from that, excise on this petrol and liquor for consumption and the customs, those are all other things. But anyhow, if you increase the tax rate of an indirect tax, it equally affect all irrespective of their class and social status. That means whether he is a rich or poor, he has to pay the tax equally if you increase the indirect tax rate. That means this is not the way you need to tax the people. If you want to tax all the people equally, then you cannot bridge the inequalities in the country. You cannot bridge the inequalities in the country. If at all you want to bridge the inequalities, those people who are earning more, you have to take the more amount of money from them so that you can bring that balance, so that you can reduce the inequalities to some extent. You can't, here in the income tax, you cannot collect the tax from the poor people who is not paying, who is not earning much. So that means those who are having money, from this you can collect. But if you increase the indirect taxes, then it will have a regressive impact on the society. Anyhow, earlier also we used to have a complex indirect taxes, but we brought a new system called goods and services tax. With this we have simplified the indirect taxes. But when it comes to the direct taxes, it was so complex. Over a period of time, it is, to some extent we are trying to simplify it, but still that complexness is there. If you looking into the income tax slabs, at one point of time in the post-independent, our highest income tax rate in our country is 97.5%. That means the maximum tax rate. There are some limits called 70%, 6%, 50%, 30%, 10%, but there is a limit called 97.5%. That means the rich people, if they are earning 100 rupees, they have to pay 97.5 rupees to the government. Not all, but those who are in that highest income slab. And 11 tax slabs are there. 11 tax slab. Slab in the sense you will define, like if there is a 0 income and 0 to 2.5 lakh income, 2.5 to 5 lakh income, 5 to 7.5 lakh income. Like that, this we call it as slabs. Suppose these people will pay some 5%, these people will some 10%, these people will pay 15%. These are not the existing taxes. I am just taking an example. So this we call it as slabs. Likewise, we used to have 11 tax slabs in our country. And over a period of time, this 97.5 has reduced. Finally, it got stabilized in the year 1997. When the former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram has presented his own dream budget, then he reduced that to 30%. From then onwards, we are readjusting within 30, but we don't want to increase the income tax beyond the 30. So this is how an income tax has reduced over a period of time. And when it comes to the corporate tax also, recently we have brought some changes. I will explain that. But what is the law that is dealing with respect to this direct taxation? Because I told direct tax include different type of taxes. So there is an act called Income Tax Act of 1961. So this Income Tax Act of 1961 is dealing with respect to this direct taxation in our country. It includes the different provisions of the different direct taxes. It was brought in the year 1961. And if you looking into this legislation is consisting of 1200 pages, 298 sections. This don't include the subsections like A, AB, ABB, AA. If you calculate that subsections also have total around 700 sections and around 14 schedules. I am talking about one particular legislation. Even our constitution itself is not having these many articles and these many schedules. The only one particular legislation called Income Tax Act of 1961 this is the complexity of that legislation. 1200 pages, 298 sections, total 700 sections, number wise 298, 14 schedules. And it is very difficult, to understand this act. A normal person cannot understand this act. And this act is a heaven of chartered accountants and lawyers. That too, not every lawyer. So only the lawyers and the chartered accountants, they can understand, and by using the provisions in this, they can get a benefit out of that, but it's no way helpful to the common man who really wanted to pay the tax to the government. Because it includes lot of provision. And sometimes people don't understand that provisions. One provision contradicts the other. One provision might be outdated, but still you are continuing. And some provisions can be misused, though it is not having relevance, but still we are keeping inside the act, and sometimes that is misused. There is a lot of scope for discretion to the implementing authority. So when there is a discretion, obviously there is a scope for corruption. So it is so voluminous, it is so complex, it led to some sort of confusions, and it is providing lot of discretion that in turns giving a scope for corruption. So many litigations on this front, and that too high cost of compliance. So it is very difficult to comply with these provisions. And if you want to file an income tax return, though your income is meager, that is around 3 lakh or 4 lakh or 5 lakh, you can't file this return. You have to go to a tax consultant and you have to file, because you can't understand that provisions. And even if you try to refer to the act to understand, you can't understand this legislation. Because of this problem, tax compliance is very difficult, lead to some sort of disputes, litigations. You can't understand this. Our tax collections are poor. You know what is the tax to GDP ratio of country India? The tax to GDP ratio of India is around 11%. It is less compared to that of many developing and developed countries. Even a 2 to 3% increase will give lot of amount of revenue to the government. On the one hand, the people of India, some people are filing the returns, but some people are not. Out of the total 130 crore population, and if you remove the adult, if you remove the children and age old, even if you consider like 70 to 80 crore people adult, and among them only around 5.7 crore people are filing the returns, and in that only some 1.4 crore people are paying the income tax. And when only this limited number of people are paying the income tax, obviously the government is looking into the indirect tax to collect the more and more amount of revenue. But is it really good? That is regressive nature that impacts everybody. Then you have to bring some sort of changes in the direct tax system so that we can increase this tax to GDP ratio, so that we will bring more amount of people into this tax net. We can make this process simple, we can make this process compliable, then it will be easy for the citizens of country to contribute for the development of the country. So that is what we need to understand. So why we need to bring the simplification? Because some people they want to evade the tax. Those people are deliberately evading the tax. Law will take its own course. But at the same time, you must make sure that your legislation, your processes, your compliance burden should be simple enough. because he is paying the 5,000 rupees of tax, and for the tax consultant he is paying another 1,500 rupees of tax and another 1,500 rupees fee, then what type of, then what is the thing that he will get? So he is not interested in that. And even those who are trying to file, those who are rich people and those who are filing, it leads to lot of litigation because of the discretionary powers that the income tax officials have. A lot of archaic provisions are there that can be misused against and that can be interpreted in any way. So those who are trying to file the income tax also, when you are creating such a problem, then they are identifying the routes through which they can evade the tax. So this tax evasion and non-paying of tax is a very serious problem in our country. So at least we need to simplify this. Those who want to pay, we must incentivize them to pay the income tax and corporation tax. So then we can take the penal provisions on the people. Simply you can't say like only 1.4 crore people are paying the tax in this country. That doesn't mean that remaining all are cheaters or remaining all are evading and they are criminals. No, you must understand, when only few people are paying, why not remaining people are paying, means you must introspect yourself first. And that is the reason why this question of simplification of income tax laws came into limelight. And it was not started recently. This question was already posed ourselves way back prior to 2009 itself. Because after simplifying the indirect tax rate, to some extent we are able to collect more and more amount of direct taxes. And I will give you, prior to this 1990s, of the 10 rupees we are collecting, most of the tax, that means around 8 to 9 rupees we used to collect it from the indirect taxes only. So that is not the way that you have to collect the tax. There must be a high amount of indirect tax, but direct tax should always be higher than the indirect tax. Then only you can bring an unequal society. You can't tax the rich and poor at the same level. You can't tax the rich and poor at the same level. So after that simplification of the indirect tax rate, later the country has started thinking about the simplification of the laws itself. And the simplification of laws process has started it in the year 2009. The simplification of the process has started it in the year 2009. Then we coined a name called direct tax code. Direct tax code. Direct tax code in the sense we are bringing a uniform, that means we are bringing a single law. In this single law, we are again rewriting the provisions of the Income Tax Act in a simplified manner, in a compliable manner, in a manner which easily understood by the people. So we proposed a direct tax code to simplify the tax laws. That process was started in the year 2009. The first draft was drafted in the year 2009. The first draft in the year 2009. So when the first draft was drafted in the year 2009, this was put into the discussion in the public, and we have brought with a revised discussion paper. A revised discussion paper. This revised discussion paper, we brought it in the year 2010. Once this revised discussion paper that has readied in the year 2010, this revised one, we introduced it into the parliament. We introduced in the parliament. And the parliament has sent this to a parliamentary select committee. And the select committee has given its report. 2012. That select committee has given its report in the year 2012. So based on the recommendation of select committee, we have prepared a final direct tax code in the year 2014. By that time the government changed, the bill lapsed. By this time the government changed and the bill lapsed. So the process was mooted in the year 2009 with a direct tax code. Later the first draft released and revised discussion paper has released in 2010. Then we presented in parliament, that went for the select committee. They have given recommendation. Based on the recommendation, we have prepared the final draft, but unfortunately by that time the government changed, the bill got lapsed there itself. Then new government came in the year 2014. New government came in the year 2014. When new government came in the year 2014, so they haven't take this as a priority. So they haven't considered this as the priority. But what they have done is they have started focusing on the simplification of the indirect taxes. They have started focusing on simplification of the indirect taxes rather focusing on direct taxes. So in the simplification process, they have brought the goods and services tax. So goods and services tax is a simplification of indirect tax. It is an indirect tax code. GST is nothing but indirect tax code. Most of the indirect taxes we subsumed into that and have made the process simple. Now you no need to pay multiple taxes. If you pay one tax called GST, that itself is fine. And tax evasion will become difficult in this GST structure. But initially when we introduced the GST, there was a problem in the initial days. That too we have demonetized the currency and GST has brought later COVID-19, it has become a complex. But we don't, when we have brought this indirect tax code, we don't want to implement the direct tax code immediately. Because always a new policy or a new reform will create a temporary shock in the economy. The economy already has got shock because of this GST and we don't want to surprise the economy with this direct tax code. But still even we did not want to bring the direct tax code immediately, but still the government is considering like we need to bring some sort of changes in the direct tax code. And while this indirect tax code is in the process, the government has constituted a committee, an expert committee in the year 2017. In the year 2017, the present government constituted an expert committee to draft a new direct tax code. This committee has given its recommendations submitted its recommendation in the year 2019. So this committee has submitted its report in the year 2019. But still this report was not made it public, lot of speculations and all. But when we have streamlined the process of GST, we wanted to streamline the process of DTC also, direct taxes also. But meanwhile, we have brought different changes to the direct tax legislations, and I will discuss some of the things. But one thing you must understand how complex it is when the budget is presented, along with the budget we will also present the finance bill. So what is this finance bill? Finance bill deals about the taxation. Once the GST came into effect, the most of the indirect tax, that means only on customs and customs on both imports and exports, and the excise on petroleum, that is only now with the union government. Remaining all subsumed into the GST. Now you can't decide the GST rates in the finance bill. Then what we are doing, the GST will be separately dealt by the GST council. But if you looking into the finance bill, what the finance bill is now constituted? Finance bill is now constituting with income tax provisions, that means direct tax provisions. Now the finance bill is mostly consisting of direct tax provisions. if you looking into the finance bill, you don't understand that bill, because every year we will try to amend some 30-40 provisions of this Income Tax Act of 1961, because that is the act dealing with your all direct taxes, and every year no one can understand which provision and all. And if you looking into the direct tax, lot of exemptions are there. Suppose I will give an example. If you are earning some 5 lakh rupees, you don't pay tax directly on this 5 lakh. You don't pay directly tax on 5 lakh. So there are lot of exemptions are there. Suppose if you are taken a house loan, that will be deducted from this amount. If you have, that means how much you are paying in return as an EMI in a year, that amount you have to deduct it from 5 lakh. If you have some medical insurance, you need to. If there is a senior citizen in your family, you need to. And if you have given any donation to anybody, if that is you can claim it under a tax. If you can claim it under a reduction of tax, that you can deduct it. So ultimately, so suppose my deductions are something like this. Okay, just assume 50,000 rupees, 20,000 rupees, 30,000 rupees. Suppose this is my deduction, just assume it has become 1 lakh on different item. So now I have to pay tax only on 4 lakh. So these deductions are very high, and these deductions will vary from the business to business. Some people say like, no, we are the new manufacturers, we need a separate exemptions, so they will get a different exemption. No, we are a startups, we need a different exemptions. No, we are a foreign investors, we need a different exemptions. No, we are a sunrise sector like pharmaceutical and drone sector, we need a different. Some will say like, no, we are from the farmer, we are from the rural area, we need a different. We are cooperative society, we need a different discount. No, we are not part of Hindu undivided family, we need a separate thing. We are the senior citizens, we are the women, we are the educational institution, we are the charitable institution. Like that, n number of exemptions are there in our income tax. So when you are filing a return, it will be very difficult. That's why I am said it is the heaven of only chartered accountants and the lawyers. So you can't understand which provision you are getting an exemption, and if you get an exemption, where you will get the problem, and which law will contradict. And if it is a contradiction, suppose under one particular exemption you have used it, but this provision is contradicting the another, you need to satisfy that provision also. If you don't satisfy, that leads to the litigation. And your income tax officer will call you and he will harass you. So that means, because of this huge number of exemptions, this finance bill has becoming so complex, and no one can understand what exactly the finance minister is trying to amend the Income Tax Act. So this is exactly the problem. With the present day Income Tax Act. So we need to consider this issue seriously. Anyhow, the committee has given its recommendation, and after that we have started implementing some of the reforms in the direct taxes. I will give you some of the reforms that are brought by the government of India till recently with respect to this direct taxes, though we have not brought the entire direct tax code. So what are the provisions that we have brought recently? And if you see, we have changed the tax structure. I will just write for your understanding. So now in the income tax, if your income is up to 2.5 lakh rupees per annum, I am just writing this old structure, new structure. This is taxable income. So if your taxable income is 2.5 lakh, then in the earlier thing you need to pay nil tax, that means no tax. Here also nil, no tax. But if your income is 2.5 lakh to 5 lakh, in the old structure you need to pay 5%, in the new structure also you need to pay 5%. If your income is between 5 lakh to 2.5 lakh, In the old structure you need to pay 20%, in the new structure you need to pay 10%. 10%. If your income is 7.5 lakh, this is 7.5. If your income is 7.5 lakh to 10 lakh, 7.5 lakh to 10 lakh, in the old structure it is 20%, in the new structure it is 15%. And if it is 10 lakh to 12.5 lakh, 12.5 lakh, in the old structure you need to pay 30%, 30%, in the new structure you need to pay 20%. And 12.5 lakh to 15 lakh, in the old structure you need to pay 30, in the new structure you need to pay 25. If it is above 15 lakh, in both the cases you need to pay 30 and 30. Now what is this old and what is this new? Now it has become optional, either you can use this or you can use that. That means this much amount of tax you need to pay. The advantage with the new one is, here you cannot take any exemptions. Here you cannot take any exemptions. If your income is 5 lakh, you need to consider it as 5 lakh. But when you are not taking any exemption, your taxation rate is less. Your taxation rate is less. But anyhow, here it is same, higher income and lower income it is also same. But in between, if you don't take any exemption, your return filing process will become simple and you can pay less amount of tax. But if you want to take an exemption, you have to pay little bit extra amount of tax, because that exemptions itself you are deleting it from your total income. So this we have brought, but we have made it as a voluntary. Whoever is interested to choose, they can choose, but unfortunately the response to this is not good. Response to this new structure is not good. That means still people want to use the exemption. As long as they are using the exemption, these laws are required. As long as these laws are there, that leads to the confrontation and conflict between the different provisions. But you have to choose the rates in such a way that it must incentivize the people to go for this, because some people are saying like this new structure is not going to help, it's better to follow the old structure because lot of exemptions you need to take. But does really that much exemptions are necessary? That is a question mark that need to be addressed in the new direct tax law. Okay, few exemptions we can understand, but you can't give n number of exemptions. That too, if you looking into the world experience, the huge number of exemptions are not going to sustain over a period of time. You can't give n number of exemptions, few exemptions are fine. But anyhow, this is a new tax structure that we have created, but still there is no much response. Even on corporate tax front also, we have brought some changes. Earlier it was 30% corporate tax was there, but we reduced it to 25%. We reduced it to 22%. We reduced it to 22%, but the effective rate it will goes up to 25%. Effective rate in the sense, on this tax you will place cess and surcharge. This is also a question. So does we really need to impose cess and surcharge? That again, that will be discussed in the direct tax code, because on the above you have to, and with this if you collect the cess and surcharge, it will become 25.17%. So that means why we have reduced to 22%? We reduced to 22% in order to provide a company should not take any exemption. Not take any exemption. So if you don't take any exemption, your process will become simple. You can simply file the taxation and pay the 22%. But if you want to pay 30%, you can take the exemptions. But exemptions you need to, the filing of taxation process will be difficult. Simply you can't say like I am doing the exemption. You need to provide proper valid documents to that, and it must be audited by somebody. It's not simply like I am take the exemption. So the process itself is difficult, and in that process if something goes wrong, that leads to the litigation. But on the one hand, government is providing an opportunity that if you want to follow the simple measure, you can follow. We are reducing the rate and don't take any exemption, pay the less amount of tax. But still to some extent it is not encouraging. Okay, these two things done on the front of this direct taxes without bringing this direct tax code. And apart from this, recently if you observe, there are variety of measures that we have brought. One thing, the dividend distribution tax, we call it as DDT, dividend distribution tax, it is abolished, because the same income cannot be taxed in the hands of both company and individual. Now the individual has to pay, because that was another litigation. Now there is a tax called branch tax by the multinational companies. Still it is there, but we haven't taken anything, but we need to looking into this. But on this front we have done. Second one, okay, this is extra. This is still it is there, government has not done on this front. When it comes to the capital gain tax, it is always an issue. Capital gain tax, every year we are doing some adjustment to this capital gain tax. Every time we are amending this capital gain tax. When it comes to the tax on startups, we have simplified the procedure for the startups. We have simplified the procedures. And recently there is a concept called retrospective taxation with respect to this multinational companies like this Vodafone and Kane Energy issue. So we have reverted that back. So retrospective taxation, we have brought some changes. And with respect to the faceless assessment, since 2017 we started faceless assessment and faceless appeal. That means you no need to now you no need to physically go to the income tax officer. You have to pay, the correspondence will be done only through online. And there is this TIN number. That means now in order to remove the harassment from the tax officials and in order to bring the transparency, whatever the notices that will be sent to you, it must have an identification number. Without identification number, you are not supposed to send a notice, and this notice will be tracked by anyone in the country. So that means you are changing the slabs, you are bringing different type of things we have brought in the last few years, but still you are doing some changes to the already old law. You are doing to the old law, but the point is you need to understand that this whatever the peripheral changes that you are doing according to the context is not going to serve the full purposes or the full purpose. It's not going to solve the purpose. Then what you need to do? Once you understand the problem that we are facing and the taxation that we are collecting, the amount of people that they are filing the tax, now lot of people are saying like you need to again revive that direct tax code. Now perhaps this is the right time, and recently in the Rajya Sabha also former finance minister said this government is removed lot of archaic laws, and this is one of the legacy issue that we need to change it. So though we are concentrating, because we are concentrated on indirect tax law and we have brought a simplified law, now the time has arisen where you need to focus on this simplification of the direct tax law and simplify it. Who can understand these 700 sections in that legislation, a voluminous document? Try to remove unnecessary provisions, make a simple law. And while we are making this law, we need to keep some points in our mind. It's not like simply we need to bring a law. So lot of ambiguities and lot of complexities, lot of discretion. So those things that were there in this, so you need to remove those things. So we need to bring a single code with unified compliance procedure. Unified compliance procedure, and the language should be simple. And that the compliance procedure should be unified and it must be simple. And one more thing, they are asking about the tax rates. The one of the major important thing what we are saying is the exemptions. So exemptions you need to remove and reduce the tax. Reduce the tax. So you need to reduce the tax rate, you need to reduce it, but anyhow you can't prescribe the tax rates in the code, because tax rates has to be decided by the government every year based on their own expenditural needs. If the government want to spend more, then definitely they will increase the tax. But on overall, our philosophy should change. Our philosophy should be like this: we need to reduce these exemptions, we need to remove the exemptions, so that more the people, so and remove the exemptions and reduce the tax, so that more the people will come and they will file, because of these exemptions it has become very difficult, leading to conflicts. And if you just remove that exemption, and when exemptions are removed, people think like they need to pay more tax. So for that reason you need to reduce the tax. For that reason you need to reduce the tax, then it will become simple. Next, when it comes to the taxing of the domestic companies and foreign companies, domestic companies and foreign companies, domestic companies and foreign companies, so it should be on par, it should be on par. So that is one aspect we need to. Next, when it comes to treating the different businesses in India itself, when you are treating different businesses, the different procedures are there, those things should be avoided, those things should be avoided. And when foreign companies are having a branch in India, how you need to tax. And when it comes to the taxation of the capital gains, there should be a uniformity in taxing the capital gains. And moreover, now we are talking about the value addition in agriculture sector. Value addition in agriculture sector. So when value addition is happening in the agriculture sector, on the name of agriculture, you are not supposed to take an excuse. So agricultural income beyond a particular point should also be brought into the tax net, because we can understand like poor farmers are there, they are in distress, but on the one hand there is a value addition that is happening, people are gaining lot, why can't they pay? And moreover, this tax evasion, strict tax evasion must be reduced in such a manner. You used to use the technology. So the technological intervention is very, very important in assessing the tax. Technological intervention. See, two things you need to understand when you are preparing your tax policy. One is technological aspect, second one is psychological aspect. Technological aspect in the sense you have to use the technology to find out the tax evasions and exact assessment of the tax. Psychological in the sense people will have some psychological attitude, like if you ask them to pay more tax, they don't pay. So you try to reduce the tax level to some extent, so that you remove the exemption and you reduce the process, make a faceless appeal and make a faceless assessment, so that psychologically they feel like, oh, it's good for me and I can pay. And now one thing you need to understand, you need to reduce the difference between the cost of tax evasion and cost of tax compliance, because you need to reduce that gap. The difference you must reduce. Suppose if someone is feeling like, if I am evading the tax, what is the cost that I am going to, what is the price that I am going to pay? But if I pay the tax, what extra I am getting? So the cost of tax evasion and the cost of tax compliance, the difference you must reduce. If you reduce the difference, no, then people think like, okay, what is wrong? Anyway, it's a difference of maybe 1,000 or 2,000 rupees. Why should not I pay? Otherwise, if someone catch you and you will go to the jail, you will go to the court, you will go to the authorities, and it will cost you. So that the difference between tax evasion and the cost involved in the tax evasion, cost involved in the tax compliance must be reduced. And that will be possible by using these technological methods and even psychological aspects. And most of the direct tax now we are collecting in the form of this TDS and TCS. So tax deduction at the source, tax collection at the source. Why can't you use this TDS and TCS so that you can track the transaction? And once the transaction is tracked and once you collected some amount of money, then definitely they will file the returns. They will file the returns. Otherwise, income tax will get this money and income tax can check with this person. Why you are not filing the returns in spite of paying this TDS and TCS? So you need to make sure that psychological voluntarily you need to you must make a policies in such a way that it should become so simple. Voluntarily people should come and pay, and this TDS and TCS provisions and technological aspects and some disparities that is there between the Indian company, foreign company, different businesses, the tax burden, exemptions. So this is the, and when it comes to the value addition, especially the agriculture and allied sectors, so these things must be taken care. Earlier there was a direct tax law, in that they have proposed something, but that has become outdated now. Until and unless we will get the new provisions, we cannot discuss the specific provisions of that. But at least you need to understand, like, okay, this is something we need to understand, like the procedures are difficult today, we need to simplify it, then only we can increase the tax complaints, then only we can collect more amount of taxes. One more thing, when you are bringing this law, see, the law which you are talking about is 1961. When this law was made, their idea is different. Their philosophy to collect the tax is different, because at that point of time it was completely a socialistic principles on which we followed. Government is the sole the government is the one who will spend the money, who will make the investment, and it is the one who will bring the equality in the society, because government is the prime mover at that point of time. Government is the sole investor. So because of that, government used to tax everyone and government used to tax in a different way. But in the post liberalization period, when the responsibility of the private people, corporate people, everything is increased, now does the same philosophy valid today? Does the same philosophy valid today? That we need to understand. So the philosophy must be changed. So according to the changing needs, we need to change. One more thing, if you make this law today, it must also applicable to the next 50 years. Next 50 years, you must be in a position to assess what type of business we are going to get in the next 50 years. What are the different ways of what are the different ways through which you can tax? What are the nature of business that are going to be changed? Nature of the trade is going to change. New businesses are going to come, because when we have drafted our law in the 1961, we were not so bothered about this capital gains of a multinational company, but today it has become an issue and it has become an international issue. It has not taken away the reputation of the country. Now we have corrected it. So the point is, today when you are making the law, you must foresee the future and how we are going to get and what are the futuristic problems that we are going to get and how we can deal. That you must keep it in mind when you are bringing the new law. And apart from the experience of 1961, you must learn. Experience of 1961 laws you must learn. You should not make hundreds and hundreds of sections. One section contradicts the other, which will only help the lawyers and all. So the experience with the 1961 legislation and also the future aspects also need to be considered. And the new technology that is coming, the level of litigations, the level of complaints, and even when it comes to the litigations and complaints, some of the developed countries have very good legislations. They don't have this much amount of complaints burden. They don't lead to these many litigations. Now you have to take the experiences from the some of the developed countries also, developed countries also. And that too, one more thing, suppose when there is a litigation, you should not go with the 1961 act like creating tribunals, appellate tribunals, courts. Now a new method of the dispute settlement has come, like arbitration, settlements. So please try to include those aspects into the new direct tax code, so that they can solve outside the formal system, so that the issues will be settled and you can pay some amount of tax. Otherwise, if it is languishing in the courts and tribunals, it will take years and years, and after that you will ask for the fine, penalty, and it will languish for 20 years. This is no way incentivize the taxpayers to pay the money, And when it comes to the tax competition, you must be very careful, because now the entire world is globalized. India is a global country now. It is having relations with all. Many foreigners coming, foreign investments coming, Indians are going, and if you tax at the higher rate, if your procedures are so complex, then you cannot compete at the world market. So these are not only the domestic experience, not only the futuristic aspect, but you must also think about the outside, how they are doing, in what way you can really change our system. So the world aspect, the global aspect, we should also keep it in mind, because this tax competition that is happening at the world level is very, very important, because capital mobility, capital is mobilizing from here to there. So these aspects, when you are taxing, must be kept it in mind. The another important aspect is this growing inequalities. This is a very big problem. It's not only problem to India, but it is a problem to everywhere. Growing inequalities. So how will you address these growing inequalities? The point is, on the one hand, you need to support the business people. You need to provide a favorable environment for the people to do the business, and you need to bring a compliance structure, but at the same time you need to reduce the inequalities in the economy. And reduction of inequalities through the way of indirect taxes is not going to help. It has to be done in the direct taxes. So if you collect more amount of direct taxes, it will create some sort of inconvenience to the people who are earning more, but at the same time the government is having a responsibility to reduce the inequalities. So your tax law, the new tax law, should also address the concerns of inequality, So these are the different aspects that you must consider when you are bringing a new tax law. Already the old laws were there, but these things must be kept in mind. And even once a new law comes, it must satisfy the conditions or the issues that I have explained. And if you bring this a simplified law, Indian economy will become competitive in the world market. The processes become simple, compliance becomes simple, Indians can also pay the more taxes, the tax base is increased. When tax base is increasing, you can reduce the tax rate. Suppose if it's only 10 people are paying, then you have to collect just assume 50%. When 10 people are only paying, you need to collect the 50% of the tax. But when this 10 has become 50, then you can reduce it to 10%. If it has become 100, you can reduce it more. And this reduction of tax rate will itself incentivize more people to pay the tax, because even at this lower level, if they are not paying the taxes, and if that evasion of tax is caught by the tax people, then he has to pay more. That's why I am saying the difference between the cost of tax evasion and the tax complaints must be reduced. So if you increase with these procedures, if you increase the tax base, then you can reduce the tax rate. The tax rate will incentivize more people to pay. When this happens, then certainly you can reduce your indirect taxes, and which will benefit all, because which is in a regressive nature. So that indirect taxes you can reduce it, and so that you can make more collections, and also you can bring some sort of inequality. Okay, so this is how it is going to help. So recently, when there was a debate happened in the Rajya Sabha with respect to this finance bill, actually finance minister has brought some amendment to the taxation process of charitable organizations, and for that they have brought so many amendments that no one can understand. And this is not happening today, but it is a legacy issue, and I think you understood what are the issues that we have and what are the litigations that is leading to, and what are the complaints burden. So we need to make a simple law with a simple language with an increased compliance and also which lead to increase the tax base, thereby we can reduce the tax so that we can increase our tax collections. That will really help us to spend more, and that ultimately leads to the development of this country with reducing inequalities. So if you simplify the direct tax law by bringing a direct tax code, this is the thing that you are going to get. Okay, so this is something about simplification of direct tax laws. Thank you.
Amrita IAS Academy.